Securing Industry 4.0, a conversation with Ryan Spur, the Manufacturing Strategy Director at Connection, and Travis Gwynn, the Principal Partner Solution Architect on the Microsoft 365 Security, Compliance, and Identity Partner Team. I'm James Hilliard. Today, modern cybersecurity tools, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity insurance, all of those are important topics for those in the manufacturing space. So let's discuss on this episode of the Connection Tech Experience Podcast. As we dive into this conversation, let me ask you, Ryan, and I'm looking for a short response, and then Travis, the same thing. We have been talking about, and audiences have been hearing about for a while, that we can offer to simplify, modernize, and secure your manufacturing environment. They've heard that messaging, Ryan. Can it actually be done today?
Yeah, absolutely can be done. I think the truth is most manufacturers aren't taking the necessary steps around asset discovery, risk mitigation of those assets, and then creating all the associated perimeter defenses that can be applied. Will it always be perfect? No. But organizations, especially manufacturers, have a long way and a substantial ability today to significantly improve their security posture, both in IT, but more importantly these days, in the operational domain.
So Ryan's optimistic, Travis. Are you optimistic? Can we simplify, modernize, and secure manufacturers today?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we can. We have a number of solutions, just from the Microsoft perspective, to go out and discover and identify not only more modern IoT devices that we can put an agent on, but even those legacy devices that don't have the ability to run a local agent, right? So, and we're continuously improving. If we take a look at Microsoft's history on that specifically, we've come a long way in providing that type of agent and agentless monitoring. So we're trying to adapt a very holistic approach to cybersecurity for on-prem, in the cloud, IoT, OT, SCADA environments, etc.
Okay, so if we can simplify, and if we can modernize, and if we can secure manufacturers, why are they still saying things aren't as simple, things aren't as modern, and things aren't as secure as we want them to be? What's your view, Ryan, the biggest hurdle or two for folks getting to that state, being at that state today?
I mean, here's what we see most often, I think, and this varies based on the type of customer, their legacy, their culture, and how they've sort of approached this. We have, on one end, we have customers that think, hey, I'm not going to be attacked. I don't build or produce anything of interest. No one will ever attack me. And then on the far extreme, we have folks that say, either they have high risk intellectual property, they know that they've been attacked or are being attacked or attempted, and they're making the necessary investments. Regardless of where they are in that spectrum in terms of their culture and their risk tolerance or view around this, most organizations just simply have this bifurcation between operations, or we hear OT, operational technology, and IT. And so, for years, most organizations have made inroads and significant investments on the IT managed side from a cybersecurity perspective. And I would say, most organizations have good hygiene here. When we get in the operational space, they haven't modernized their plants, meaning they haven't modernized their networks. They haven't modernized their endpoints. Why? Because it's kind of what, we'll get into this probably and unpack this later, but this heterogeneous environment of all these different things with elongated life cycles, and many which are outside of their support windows, and they simply can't be patched or upgraded. So I think, the lack of a sort of network modernization, the lack of tool sets that are in the operations environment that allow us to monitor, to identify assets, to identify changes in assets, networking, and in the environment, to integrate those up the stack with corporate NOC, SOC, and cybersecurity monitoring, so we have some an improved single pane of glass, if you will. Most organizations haven't made those investments, and those things exist today. That's a path they can go down. And will it be 100% perfect? No, but they'll get to a significantly improved posture for the entirety of the organization.
And Travis, in conversations I have, it's not a lack of desire to be more secure. It's not a lack of desire to be modern. It's a lack of what that you see that has held some folks back. And are we finally at a tipping point to really see most of us now get pulled along, because we know there have been manufacturing organizations that are leading the way, that are modern, that are secure, that are doing this the right way.
Yeah, certainly. So, there's a number of roadblocks or stumbling blocks that have to be addressed. Staffing limitations and knowledge gaps. Not having enough people to deploy this, and having enough people that actually have the knowledge to do it. It's because it's a newer kind of field, right? Everybody knows identity and how to do users and how to patch servers, but IoT OT is a little bit different in knowing how, what to do and how to do it. And we like I said earlier, we have a lot of legacy devices that may have to be addressed differently, than something more modern that can run an agent, or that was designed with security in mind from the beginning, which a lot of them weren't. And even insurance. They're cyber insurance. Insurers have specific security requirements that they want met to be able to provide insurance. And so a lot of times they're like, well, we want to implement this, but we need to make it so that it meets the requirements set by our insurers. And I think that's one of the some of the biggest blocks that we really see.
And I'll stick here for a moment, and then I do want to get into some of the technologies and services available from Connection, from Microsoft, to really get into and help teams modernize and secure. But on the cyber security insurance front, my understanding too is if organizations just do some of the basics, right, and get that locked in, that can even reduce premiums, right? If you're not doing good general hygiene, it's going to cost you a lot of money. But if you're just doing some of the basics, if you're following some of the standards out there, that can go a long way in one, cutting that down, but also then getting your whole organization starting to think on the security front mindset. Real quick from you, Travis, and then Ryan, and then we'll move on to some other items.
A lot of them actually, it even goes further than that, to the point where some insurers want access to the customer networks, so that they can continuously monitor the state of security, right? And it's almost like the little plugins for your car, right? So that they're monitoring your driving habits. But when you're talking millions and millions of dollars, or even I guess billions, they want to know that it's not just an annual audit for security compliance, right? Because you go through and get ready for an audit, and you pass your audit, and then 6 weeks later new patches come out and you don't apply them, or you roll out some new project, and now you're really out of security compliance, but they're still they've said, oh yeah, we'll cover you. They now want more up to date, almost near real time status of your security posture.
Travis is totally right. This is an evolution we've seen over the last 5 years, where people weren't worried about cybersecurity in manufacturing. Maybe they had policies, and maybe they started getting policies. And I think what we're seeing is an immense shift in the way policy is handled by insurers for manufacturing cybersecurity insurance. I mean, the data just bears it out. Manufacturing has been the number one most attacked industry over the last couple of years. Right, it hasn't gone away. In some cases, maybe it's worse. He's absolutely right. Premiums are increasing due to the existing cybersecurity posture of most organizations. I mean, we Connection does its own biannual cybersecurity survey of customers, and this is something we watch. And we've seen premiums increase, where 59% of our customers have seen their premiums increase. 43% have had availability of cybersecurity limited to them due to their cybersecurity posture. We see an increase in the number that are struggling to obtain or keep cybersecurity insurance premiums, and the net of it is what Travis said. They're not just going to blindly give customers cybersecurity insurance anymore. There is a risk. It's real. And not only do they want to understand what's going on in sort of your IT managed domain and how your cybersecurity posture is there, but now they've gotten bit, and they're smart enough that they want to go in and poke around, and as Travis said, maybe even have direct line of visibility into what you're doing in every part of your business, including that operational environment, right? Factories, fields, labs. these areas create immense risk for insurers and your business, and this is going to drive change.
So the insurers want insight, but let's get away from the insurance conversation for a moment and just go to the manufacturers. I do believe a lot of them want insight as well, and they don't know some of the assets they have. They don't know if something can be modernized or not, or the visibility. That's something I've heard in conversations in the space has been a challenge. So let's dive into, Ryan, starting with you at a higher level, and then maybe we can talk about some of the Microsoft specifics that we can provide to manufacturers to allow them to get that insight. What are some of the things that they need to be exploring, implementing, talking about, Ryan?
I think you raise a different point of view, right? Where there's regulation, there's cybersecurity, there's maybe the corporate CISO that's thinking like, how do we protect the organization for potential risk and ransomware and all this. So there's sort of like that fear or risk avoidance mindset. But then there's also what I think you were getting at, which is at the end of the day, manufacturers are there to design, produce, and deliver product. And that's the core of your business. And so any disruption to that is a disruption to your ability to earn revenue or your ability to be more profitable. And so I think when we get back to the nuts and bolts of how manufacturers operate, and this is something we've seen sort of a shift in, and this has been sort of borne out in some of the survey data we've done with customers, which is it isn't only about cybersecurity. That's a huge piece of it, right? It's just like an accidental someone pulling a plug on a critical piece of machinery and taking the line down, right? It's just another potential threat to production and uptime. But cybersecurity, because the risk is there, organizations are just rethinking their overall posture. Like, how do I not just avoid financial loss or downtime due to a cybersecurity event or damage to my reputation and things like that? We all see and read that in the paper, and it's happening all the time to manufacturers. But manufacturers are also just sort of fundamentally rethinking, what does modernization mean, right? It isn't just modernization for the sake of being cyber secure. It's modernization so that we can layer on all those new technologies that engineers and the plant management and the new equipment and automation and AI and all the things that people want to do. And so I think fundamentally we're seeing our customers, especially those that are sort of leading, rethinking what it means to run plant modernization and plant infrastructure, and that's inclusive of cybersecurity. So, I think, most of our customers are rethinking the design of their networks and how they integrate operations with IT. That creates its own risks, right? But makes these organizations more likely to scale solutions and integrate these plants with the rest of the business all the way up through cloud. And secondarily, I think we're starting to see organizations layering in or building in cybersecurity into that modern design, right? And the whole idea is we don't want to just wait until an event happens and then go troubleshoot it and try to remediate it. By then it's too late. It's extremely costly. It probably led to downtime. So I think most organizations are trying to build in real-time asset discovery. They're trying to be able to baseline the assets that are out there, the routes in which assets are communicating to each other, and or detect changes in the environment in real time. Why? Because it could be a perfectly legitimate change by an engineer in the environment, or it could be a bad actor who's in the space making changes that no one has visibility. So the whole idea that we're seeing is moving away from just this idea of deploying agents and not, the idea that we can't really deploy agents everywhere anyways, as Travis indicated, and some of the basic securities like a DMZ. We're really trying to say, like, what's in our environment? Has anything new been placed in our environment? Has anything changed in the environment? Is there any anomaly or suspicious behavior in our environment? And then bringing that right up to the right actors, whether it's plant management, engineering support, or our cybersecurity teams who manage, visibility across the entirety of the business, so that someone can act immediately. Though that's kind of like where we need to go, and that's where we see customers trying to modernize.
And as they try and modernize, Travis, are we seeing more? My understanding back in the day was, right, we'll build our IT systems, we'll build our OT systems, and neither of the two shall meet. And now, especially you with an architect background and focus there, is the idea get these folks together at the early stages, have those conversations, and then architect solutions that cover both needs.
Yeah, I would. My point of view on this is I don't think they should meet. I think they should be air gapped, but that's probably not going to happen. So when we come back to the real world and understand that they are going to talk to each other, that they need to be Microsoft has adopted the Secure Futures Initiative, and secure by design, secure by default, secure process. So thinking about security to begin with. How are we going to make these things secure? How are we going to limit, the access, right? So and not only we have to I think we have to build the architecture with that in mind to begin with, putting our OT systems on on their own networks, right, their own VLANs, and then very very carefully and deliberately providing just the right access at just the right time to those networks, and then being able to almost everybody that's doing this is probably been there for a while, so they're going to have to go out and use things to discover what they have, and then be able to maybe move those over kind of to those other networks, right, whether it's running a sniffer and doing network traffic analysis, or Defender for IoT will go out and discover a lot of different things, and then as Ryan said, behavioral analysis to kind of see what's going on in security. I think that's critical, and then being able to push all that stuff into a SIM or SOAR solution to be able to monitor and search and hunt when things do happen.
What you're laying out there, what I'm hearing is there are a lot of decisions to be made for a lot of organizations. So, Ryan, let's talk a little bit about that kind of decision-making process, because there are folks listening that may not have a great plan right now. Maybe they do, and they've started working on that, but they still are looking for guidance. And that's something that we're seeing just in the modern world. Any of these modernization journeys need a group working on. It's not for these companies to go it alone and just go and try and source their own stuff. Really having those partners out there has shown to be the best practice out there in across industries, I think, not just in manufacturing, but across all industries. But what are you seeing? How can your team help these manufacturers get this information, start prioritizing these challenges, and then making decisions against them, saying, this is where we need to go first? Obviously, security probably has to be near the top of the list, because we no longer just add on security. We start with security. But talk a little bit about what that process can look like for a team that engages with yours.
So I'll start sort of on the leading edge, for organizations that are maybe they have their own thoughts or ideas, but they want validation. Organizations who have maybe on the other end of the spectrum, which is that they're not really sure where to begin. And so, at Connection with our manufacturing practice, and we do offer an OT cybersecurity assessment, and it's kind of do exactly the things that you're alluding to, and that Travis and I talked about. One of the first steps is really to assess what your environment actually looks like. Does it even have risk? What are the priorities of those risks? How do those risks affect your ability to produce and do the things that your business focuses on each and every day? And so, with our OT cybersecurity assessment, we essentially go in and deploy technology that allows us to discover everything, not just the IT managed devices, not the IT managed, end user compute devices, but everything, all the industrial control systems, the IoT, the industrial IoT sensors that might have been deployed by engineers, and all the one-off technology, all the way up to and inclusive of things like building management systems. People forget. Sometimes we have this human way of bifurcating things and saying, the technology that exists is only IT, or the technology that exists is only the control systems with the robots and the factory lines. But the reality is, in today's organization, especially with things like facility management and facility equipment morphing in the same way that we see everywhere else, all these things are present or becoming present on your network and in your environment. And so, Connection really tries to go in there, understand the assets that are out there, logically align those into your business, your functions, and the way you earn business and your risk, and then make prioritize recommendations for how to mitigate those over time. But at the end of the day, it comes down to some of these things that Travis and I have been talking about, which is having visibility, having real-time monitoring, and being able to integrate that through a collaborative practice between operations, IT, cybersecurity, and potentially third parties if you're working with them.
Well, Travis, this is where I want to name names, and I want to get in people's ears some of the Microsoft tools. And these might be tools that they already have kind of in their stack that they might not recognize or utilize for overcoming some of the challenges that we have laid out. But what are some of those tools that Microsoft has been investing in? Because that goes to one of the questions I asked you guys earlier. Simplify. Sometimes simplifying is going to the leader out there in industry and utilizing the tools they have in their stack, not going to 5 or 6 or 18 different vendors to try and cobble something together yourself, which we know a lot of manufacturers have done over the years, just because that's how that industry has been. Merger acquisition, old technology you can't update. So it can be in some places, I understand, a big tangle. So what are some of the tools from Microsoft that manufacturers are utilizing today that give them the insight?
Yeah, so first and foremost, probably Defender for IoT. So that's to specifically address this need. But this is just one prong in a multi-pronged defense, right? So with Defender for IoT and Microsoft Defender for Endpoint, having those out, right? So Defender for Endpoint is covering iOS, it's covering Android, it's covering Windows, it's covering Linux. It's covering more than just your Windows devices. NASA was hacked a while back because somebody plugged in a rogue Raspberry Pi to the network, right? So being able to discover those devices. With IoT and providing endpoint protection there, and then pushing all that stuff into Microsoft Sentinel so that you can have a SIM where you can view and create dashboards and get alerts, and Sentinel's also a source, so you could do automated response there. And then I hadn't mentioned it before, but zero trust is kind of the new initiative. It's not it's not a Microsoft concept here, but practicing zero trust where you're essentially closing everything down and then opening up things on demand. So everything in our Intra suite with conditional access and multi-factor authentication for users. Just-in-time administration elevation, so that not everybody's so not all accounts are administrators all the time. And then we also have our compliance suite, which will help you track your ISO or your FedRAMP regulatory requirements to be able to better monitor and keep kind of keep up with the new rules and regulations there. So we have a pretty comprehensive and holistic approach here to cybersecurity overall, with specific products to address this environment.
I know a lot of the tools have been being simplified. User interfaces, working through them, don't need the highest level of expertise anymore because we're building that into, right? Solutions architect like yourself and others are building that simplified functionality into the tools. But Ryan, there are still teams that don't have enough people on staff. There are still teams that are lacking some skill out there. So what to do if someone's listening and they find themselves in that boat saying, yeah, great, these tools are there, but we still might be lost even if they're in our hands because we don't have the time to get trained on them, or because, as you had alluded to earlier, we're still just trying to make that widget and get it out the door and make our 2% margin or something like that. We can't waste a lot of that on some of this modernization. So if someone's in that position, what's their route? How do they get the benefits of the technologies if they're not able to manage it themselves?
Yeah, so one of the other services that Connection offers, for example, is Connection's managed cybersecurity and compliance with Microsoft service. And so, this is Travis brought up a good point, which is that there's sort of all these capabilities that Microsoft has. In some cases, our customers might already be entitled through their existing agreements to those, or could easily be entitled. to those Microsoft features. And as you kind of kicked off that segment, talking about sort of the diversity of tool sets that are in there, and so what we absolutely see this. We saw this in our recent cybersecurity survey, where most organizations simply lack the skill sets. There's turnover. This is a high demand field in terms of cybersecurity. And so most organizations are struggling to keep pace with what they have. So they are interested in sort of simplifying their stack, if you will, to make it more manageable. Most organizations that we talk to are also interested in reducing or minimizing their overall cost associated with all these products, right? And so there's a sense of focus on simplification or rationalization, and then also to bring them more capability. So with our managed cybersecurity and compliance with Microsoft service, we're basically able to help organizations, whether they lack the skill sets or visibility into all these tool sets, or they're not sure where to begin. We basically are able to go in, assess all the tool sets that they have today. We're basically, as Travis kind of pointed out as well, able to understand, hey, for this particular industry, you might be regulated and you have to adhere to, say, NIST 80171 or CMMC or ISO 27001, or you have these sort of regulatory cybersecurity requirements. And so we're able to map those things out and then basically set a path for the customer to say, hey, this is what you have today. These are your obligations, whether it's cybersecurity or regulatory, or your desired standards that you want to aspire towards. And, here's what you're already entitled to, or what we could simply turn on with the Microsoft stack. And here's how we could transition you from where you are today to a more simplified, manageable, more successful security posture with Microsoft. And oh, by the way, we can also tell them how much they'll save potentially, right? And so this is a really important assessment, and it really allows us to help our customers to get to baseline and understand what it'll take to get to a different posture with a different set of tool sets.
One of the last areas I was hoping to cover, and I think we've got a little time to do so, is artificial intelligence, and obviously a huge wave of technology impact on the manufacturing side. Travis, I want to start with you. I'm not sure if you've heard this term before, Copilot. You
Yeah,
familiar with that word?
I think I have to mention that my employment contract at least 5 times in any conversation. So glad you got to it, or I would have been in trouble. So yeah, Copilot, generative AI is the next step, right? So, you may be familiar with the Industrial Revolution. There's been more than one of them apparently, and we're currently in the fourth industrial revolution, right? So we're spending about $20 billion over the next 5 years in research and development. You may have heard of Copilot or M365 Copilot. It's one of the best things I think we've come up with in a very long time. The reason why Copilot is very useful is it, it, it it's not going to replace a human, but it's going to enhance them, right? So it's going to take a tier one security analyst to a tier 2.5. You think about things that uh, when you start using AI to go through and do things at a speed at which a human simply can't do, right? We think about incident response, and you start digging into an incident. Maybe it's a really bad one. Maybe it's a crit sit, and you're there 24/7 until it's fixed. And your executive team probably is going to go home. But then when they come in the next morning, they're going to want to know. They're going to want to know, what's the status. Instead of a human spending 2.5, 3 hours, say, oh, geez, the leadership team is going to be here in the morning. We need to get them a status report, which essentially stops them from working the incident. You can have Copilot do that. Things like getting scripts and being able to literally reverse engineer obfuscated scripts, and not only give you the source of the script, but even interpret it and put it into natural language and explain to you in normal English what it is the script's doing, right? And we have to be able to do this. There's what was it, 3.8 million gap in skilled, qualified cybersecurity experts. And there's no way we're going to fill these, right? I don't see that it happening anytime soon. So we have to be able to essentially multiply the people that we have, and that's really what it does. And the other thing is we have to use it because I'll guarantee you the attackers are using it. You can set up generative AI, large language models on a laptop, right? There's anybody can go off and buy a high end video a GPU, and I mean I literally have a laptop that has a high end GPU in it, and I've set up my own generative AI large language model right here on my desk. So I can go use that, and I control what it does and how it does it, and they're using it. So we have to be able to keep up.
And keeping up on the developments, Ryan, that's also something the connection team is doing. Your manufacturing team working closely with the Helix team, which has been stood up over the last year and a half to really focus on this and help guide customers forward, including manufacturers forward, in utilizing AI and figuring out how it's going to impact their organizations.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't have covered it any better than Travis did. I mean, the end of the day is he hit it spot on. Whether it's LLMs or generative AI, it's all about augmenting the workforce to sort of do with the workforce you have more at scale. And I think cybersecurity is no different than that. This is probably one of the biggest challenges with cybersecurity, right? There's so much data being produced, and if you do some of the steps that we've talked about in this podcast, which is going out and deploying the right technologies, collecting the right data, and bringing that up into a corporate strategy, and then tying that into all the right tool sets for monitoring or Copilot for security, I think this is where it becomes extremely powerful. Our ability to mine all of that data to say, hey, listen, we know we're having this event underway. Where else could this be happening, and is this related to anything else? And you can literally have conversations with all the cybersecurity data and other data that's being produced from your environment, and really get mapped out recommendations for how you attack the strategy or how do you mitigate it and all these sorts of things. And I think this is immensely powerful. And this is no different than we see, how we see Gen AI and LLMs applied to, other domains. It's going to radically change how different job roles, including cybersecurity, effectively do their job each and every day.
So the bottom line, there's some challenges out there. We know we're at a space with the knowledge that we have gained and the technology and tools available out there that we can simplify, modernize, and we can secure our manufacturing operations out there. There are a lot of decisions to be made. Those aren't to be made on your own. Reaching out, connecting with the connection team, of course, with teams at Microsoft and others to really help you get that holistic view and plot your course forward. That's really kind of what the next steps are. We really appreciate you all listening to our conversation here. A couple of things I do want to share. If you want some more information, I'll head you over to community.connection.com. Click on the security tab there, and you can get some more information, cybersecurity, and you can get some more information. There's some other articles there, a couple penned by Ryan, to learn more about just kind of what's going on in that space. I also encourage you to jot down this phone number. It's 800-998-0067. 800-998-0067. Reach out, talk to our team, continue the conversation. Over at connection.com, click on the Solutions and Services tab there. You can explore the modern infrastructure and cybersecurity pages. Of course, if you have an account team already in place, give a chat out to them. Please also like, share, and subscribe to our Tech Experience podcast if you haven't done so already. Thanks again to Ryan and his team, and big thanks to Travis and the Microsoft team for chatting and sponsoring this conversation. I'm James Hilliard. We do look forward to talking to you all down the road.